This podcast is brought to you by Pragmatic Play, a leading game developer providing player favorites to the most successful brands across the industry. With an award-winning multi-product portfolio of slots, live casino, bingo, virtual sports, and more, Pragmatic Play is powering up new possibilities of play through one single API. Visit pragmaticplay.com and discover your favorite every time.
Jan.
Michael.
First of all, did I pronounce your first name correctly?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Welcome to the iGaming Next Marketing Podcast. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Pleasure. So I'm going to try and do it justice to introduce you a little bit here. So you're the head of marketing platforms for Betsson Group, and you spent almost 6 years with Betsson. And before that, you did almost 10 years in your own company, Web Success, building out e-commerce business and helping them with their marketing efforts. You're passionate about personal development, psychology, physical training, as we can see, SEO, and spearfishing / freediving. Was that roughly correct?
Among other things, yeah. Got a bit of a long list of hobbies, but
you have a lot of hobbies.
I do.
That's
when
a good thing to have.
Yeah. So when I find time, I like to keep my schedule full. You know? I've got 3 kids, so they don't leave me a lot of time after work. But I try to make the best of my time. I like, I'm quite outdoorsy. I like technology when it comes to work, but then, after work, I like to play outside.
Yeah. Nice. So let's start from the end, because I'm super curious about the free diving, spearfishing a bit. So how does that work, and how it's very much into freediving, or you need to hold your breath for a long time, no?
Yes, at least you have to try.
Yeah.
So it usually involves me chasing fish like an idiot and trying to hit something. Been doing it for like 4 years now. I'm slightly getting better at it, but it does involve a lot of stamina in terms of the breath hold and stuff like that. So it's not just technique. It's one of those sports where you really need to work on your physical endurance, but I love it. It's like, it's like you're discovering the underwater world and almost being a part of it in a way, plus the breathing really relaxes you. And when you actually manage to catch something, I don't know, it must be some kind of primal thing, but you really feel like, wow, even if it's a small fish, you feel like you really did something special. So it's great. I love it. I
can imagine. So did you see, I think it was just recently, I was seeing on social media, I think it was a Ukrainian woman, I think, that set a new record for world record, I think she said. What was it? Do you know the details?
I can't remember the number, but it was something ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think it was like over 100 meters, well over 100 meters. Blows my mind to be
with
honest.
no fins, I think. It was just completely
I
free.
can't remember if it was with or without fins. Could be without fins, actually.
I was pretty sure it was. It was mind-blowing. So anyway, let's save that for another podcast on free diving.
Yeah.
Today, John, we're here to talk about MarTech. Let's start with the definition. So you have worked with this area for a long time. So for you, in your own words, what is MarTech and why do you think it's important?
Yeah, so that's obviously a very good question. So I think MarTech is, it's the discipline in how technology is used for marketing effectiveness and productivity. So it is the way that you research, build, implement, maintain your marketing tools so that you can get the best out of your marketing. I think the biggest advantages when it comes to MarTech and really paying attention to MarTech is that it can really increase the efficiency when it comes to both money and time spent. So I think it could really increase your returns. By making what you're doing much more effective. It can help improve your targeting, it can help improve your reach, it can help improve your tracking and optimization. And obviously it's not becoming any easier to reach customers. Competition is always, getting fiercer and fiercer. So if you could do anything to reduce your spend and improve the value that you're getting out of your efforts, that's always something I think to look out for. So I think that's probably It also helps customer experience. I think used well, you can improve also customer experience, and which is obviously something that's going to affect the brand overall, not just direct conversions. So yes, I see a lot of advantages there.
Yeah.
MarTech.
So anyone who spends money on marketing spend effectively should be paying attention. Betsson is obviously one of the larger operators in our industry.
Yeah.
So B2C company, so to speak, we're communicating directly to consumers. Do you see also B2B companies engaging in MarTech, or is it specifically for B2C?
Yes, I think B2B businesses also use MarTech quite a bit. They use maybe different forms of tools sometimes. For example, there's a specific area, it's sales technology, which relates more around how you maintain your prospect list, how to know when a certain action needs to be taken, building, certain journeys with your prospects and turning them into customers. So I think B2B is, might be a bit more focused on the sales part, while the B2B will focus more on things like reaching with paid ads, for example, and among other things. But then there's also similarities. I mean, even let's say SEO tools are a part of the marketing technology landscape, tracking. So there's a lot of areas I think where both overlap. There's a few differences, but there's a lot of overlap. But definitely B2B, I think B2B is also really focusing a lot on MarTech. Sometimes it's very, very expensive to acquire a new customer as well. So again, whatever can be done to speed up and improve that process and make it cheaper as much as possible. Business owners are definitely going to be looking into that. Yeah,
whether you're B2C or B2B, or you're in the same boat, it costs money to acquire new customers. So one of the things we spoke about was, and you mentioned it briefly now as well, sort of connecting the customer journey, so to speak, and MarTech maybe being helping that equation, being a conduit, connecting these two parts. Can you give an example of that, just for the audience listening at home?
Yeah. So when it comes to connecting the customer journey, I think traditionally it's kind of always been a little bit split, because it makes sense in a way to look at acquisition on its own and retention on its own, because they require different processes, different technologies. Many times it could be a different team that's working on that. But when you look at it from the point of view of the customer, right, there's no real split, right? There's just what journey is the customer taking on that brand, From the point of view of the customer, it doesn't really matter if he's acquired or not yet, because they are still expecting the best experience. They are still expecting to get what they need at the time that they need it. They don't want to be bombarded, but at the same time, they want to be given value. So I think being able to use your technology stack and your data, especially because I think the underlying foundation is all data, right? In a way that kind of creates this seamless transition, maybe from one state to the next for the customer journey. To be more specific, there are certain tactics also that could even improve conversions, right? I mean, for example, one problem that I see is that when a customer first lands on your landing page or first lands on your home page, right? What do we know about that potential customer? And usually we don't know a lot. So what happens is we serve content, we serve something for that potential customer, which is very generic. And what happens is obviously customer experience is not the best, because you might be serving a prospect that's looking for one type of product. You might be serving him or her, content or an offer relating to a completely different product. And also from a conversion point of view, if you do that, obviously you're not going to convert as well. So if you can use, let's say, for example, data from the retention side, right, to be able to better understand new potential prospects, at least not completely deterministically, maybe in a probabilistic way, but if you can have a much better hit ratio of identifying what that particular customer might need, then you have a better chance of serving something more related, more relevant, something more contextual, and therefore improving experience and improving conversions.
So you're mentioning new customers coming in that the business have never seen
As one
before,
example,
right?
yeah, as one example, I mean, if we could use data and technology to understand more about that particular customer through different sources, through our own sources, you know, and be able to handle that potential customer better by having a bit more of an insight about that customer, and then it puts us in a much better position.
Yeah.
You know?
So for example, passing through the keyword that customer was acquired through, if they came through an affiliate site, for example, that would give you a tell or some sort of signal as to what this customer might be interested in, and you could serve a landing page that would hit that much better.
Exactly.
In real time for a new customer you have never done business with before.
Exactly. Or for, you know, let's say if you were, for example, tracking activities that happened before landing on the site, you can maybe determine things like interests and maybe even create an understanding of a potential affinity for that prospect, you know. So there are things that could be done. It's just a bit hard to set up, and obviously you need to do it in a way that actually generates value for you, because things can become a bit complex and expensive. So it's, you need to keep your feet on the ground a little bit, as much as possible, not just a little bit. But yes, and also from the other side, once a customer converts, and goes into what we would refer to as the retention side, how much information can we know about that new customer right off the bat? Maybe without waiting for a month to start getting a bit of an information, a bit more information about that new customer. So this is how I see them, kind of the two sides helping each other by kind of informing each other and allowing them to treat a new customer or a new prospect better,
You also mentioned it's not only connecting the customers, it's also connecting the internal departments or the processes inside the company. And I think I guess we have all experienced examples where, maybe because we're in the industry, I don't know if the actual end user notices it, but if you're in the industry, it's pretty obvious that it's two separate teams that are touching you on different parts of your journey, and they're completely sort of the messages are completely different when you're on a landing page versus what is being served to you when you actually sign up and land on your site, or the first email you receive, or whatever it is, right?
Yes.
What is the right formula, do you think? Like I said, does it make sense that we have a separate acquisition and a separate retention team? Should it be the same team, or headed up by the same person, or or does it make sense that they live separately?
Yeah, I think it makes. I think there's a lot of advantages to them working separately. There could also be disadvantages. I think, what I've observed while working on this role is that I think more than team structure or reporting structure, I think it's the communication and the way that the teams and the departments communicate, and the culture, like the working culture. How open are they to working together? Are they threatened of each other, or do they look for ways to actually include each other?
Yeah, sharing goals.
Sharing goals. I think that's more important than structure, because, I think I've observed both sides. Sometimes there's a good structure, but for some reason, the different parts don't really glue together. They don't, for some reason, see eye to eye that much. But then, so it really doesn't work, even though the structure is, let's say, maybe more unified. But then you can have someone from a completely different department. Like, we work obviously with a lot of different departments, and some people work really, really well together, even though we're in completely separate departments. But we've kind of really aligned on our vision. We know that we're both moving towards the same thing. So what I see happens is they include us in a lot of conversations. We include them. We pick their brains. We talk. We have ongoing catch-ups. And so we remain very connected, and we work on a lot of different things together, and we work really well. So I think more than the more than the structure, I think it's more about the communication and the culture that's built between the different teams. Yeah.
Very good.
At least in my opinion, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also even so one thing is acquisition and retention. Another thing is if you look inside the acquisition side only, for example, you very often see, or at least in my experience, this split between, for example, some companies will have digital marketing will be done in-house. and offline or ATL or the TV and the billboards, etc., will be done externally or through agencies or something like that, and or a different separate team that takes care of that as well. And so even within within the acquisition part of marketing, also seeing two different agendas, or not sharing the same goals, or who's right, who's wrong. There's this friction between the two. Is that something you recognize as well, or is that part of MarTech to help solve that as well?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think, again, from my experience, I think the bigger a department or the bigger a company gets, the more people are involved, the more this becomes challenging. On the pro side, there are more ideas, there's more knowledge, which is great. In one meeting, you can come out with, 20 new ideas. That's obviously fantastic. But then there's always the challenge as teams grow, to keep everybody kind of unified and moving towards one goal, one direction in a way. So sometimes I think that is part of the nature of the work. Again, I think it's very important to, I think it comes down to us as leaders to kind of promote that idea of wanting to work more with other teams, with other departments, even internally, wanting to collaborate more, seeing where we can help each other, where we can, instead of going in different directions, to try and sort of make things faster, because we're trying to not include way too many people, which I know is efficient sometimes, but sometimes it kind of backfires, because then you'll still need to include all the relevant people, but you'll have to do it later when maybe decisions have already started being taken. So again, I think it really comes down to communication on that front. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I guess the last piece is sort of there's at least if you follow the US marketplace, so to speak. There's obviously that whole side of the world is born and bred in land-based gaming or retail gaming, and they have still the world's gambling is still 3/4 land-based gaming effectively, so it's massive, right? But the US and I guess also UK and Italy for many years before them also have to think about the physical environment, and they speak a lot about Omni-Channel, tying it all together. Have you been exposed to that physical side as well, or been following it, and sort of again MarTech's role in tying all of that sort of thing together? Is it even possible to do proper Omni-Channel?
Yes, so definitely that's a challenge. It's not an area I've been focusing on too much. However, it is an interesting area. Like you're saying, there's a big portion of gambling that still happens offline. I think it boils down a lot to tracking, being able to find ways to track that activity. There are various ways that still you can get data, you can still track what's going on. Obviously, maybe it won't always be 100%, but at least if you can get an understanding of how things are performing, what's going on, and maybe be able to identify areas that are opportunistic or gaps, where you can improve with your marketing technology, that would be great. So I think it's a tracking channel. Obviously, then from a data point of view, you need to unify that data with the rest and make it all fit into that picture. It is doable. It takes a bit of setup.
I can imagine, and cost as well, I'm sure.
And cost, yeah. Not just building, but maintaining.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's an expense that's easy to maybe be overlooked a little bit.
Good old refactoring of code and all that stuff. Yeah. Okay, very good. And so, being a leader within the MarTech space, so what are the biggest challenges or speed bumps coming up for MarTech that you see here in 2023, or maybe even next year, 2024? Like, what are the biggest challenges you have on your desk?
So apart from challenges internally, like we mentioned, like aligning teams and stuff like that, when it comes to the marketing technology landscape, I think we're in a position where data is becoming more and more important. I'm becoming a bit fixated on data, to be honest. I think data is a word that I mention like 30 times a day. No, because what I see is that data and marketing technology have become very inseparable. It's like as time goes by, more and more data is needed. Quality needs to be better and better. It informs everything that happens within the marketing technology landscape. And I really believe that businesses who track and maintain the best levels of data can do much more than others that don't, right? Because I consider it to be the fuel, in a way, of marketing technology. So there's more and more demand for that. But at the same time, I see restrictions increasing, right? So obviously there's the cookieless future where third-party cookies will be, not really available to us. Device tracking becomes more and more difficult. So the more we need data, it seems like, in a way, the less and less we'll be able to get that directly. So I really think it's important from a marketing technology point of view to think about how to mitigate that. There are a lot of different solutions. I think a lot of MarTech tools are also being proactive in that. They are developing solutions to tackle this problem, because obviously it's a problem for everyone, and not just gaming, any industry. So there are solutions, but again, you need to figure out maybe which one is best for you, how to integrate that with your current architecture, how to maintain it, where you should have something done in-house or where you should have something that is, a readily available third-party tool. So yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges is data. As I can see, even companies that are, quite well equipped with working with data and have a lot of work done already, it's not always very straightforward. I think that's one of the biggest, probably.
Do you remember there's this meme or picture going around in social media a lot where they use Lego, and on the left hand side they have a big mix of Lego, all sorts of different colors scattered everywhere.
Yeah.
Which represents sort of data points collected, if you will.
Yeah.
And then the next step, all the Lego blocks are sort of categorized into different colors.
Yeah.
And that's sort of your data warehouse, or sort of making sense out of, collecting it, having a table kind of thing. And anyway, eventually you get to but in order to assemble the Lego, you have to actually act on this data that you have and use it to your advantage to actually execute and build something new with it.
Yes.
I mean, we have been, as an industry, we have been talking about big data, or the world has been talking about big data. That was the big topic, pre-generative AI, at least some years ago.
Yes, for sure.
So if we just zoom in on that data area, data collection, making sense of data, and actually executing and building on data, in my experience, I see a lot of companies that are obsessed with collecting data, and they measure every single thing that they can. But really where the challenge lies is utilizing that data and actually executing, making sense of it, visualizing it, finding learnings from it that you can then use to build and optimize from that point. What's your view on that as well? That's sort of those different steps within data, if you will.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the challenges with data is similar to one of the challenges with MarTech, in the sense of, like we mentioned, right, there's like around 12,000 tools, or a bit less, I think, as of this year, that are available to marketers. Which tools are good for you? Which ones do you need? Which ones do you don't? I think it's the same with data. You can be tracking a lot of data. You can be tracking everything, or close to everything, but do you need to track everything? Because obviously there's there's setup which is required, and there's also maintenance which is required. Let's not mention storage, because that became much cheaper, but setup and maintenance is definitely expensive. So I think the way to look at it is, at least again in my opinion, is what have a plan as much as possible. What you will start from the top. Where do I want to go with my day? What do I want to be able to do? So at least, even if you can't do it now, you can plan ahead and you can make sure that you're collecting that data, but it should always fit within a part of your strategy or a part of the tactics that you're planning. How will I use this data? And I think it's on a need basis. So
start from the end, right?
Start
First
from
is to figure out what question are you trying to answer,
get
right?
to. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Build backwards from there.
Exactly. So if you're not sure maybe what data you should be collecting, I think maybe it's a good thing to potentially take a step back and think about what do I want to be doing now and what do I want to be doing maybe in the next few years. What's my strategy? What am I trying to improve? And so from there you can work backwards and say, okay, what data do I need to collect and maintain? When I mention maintenance, I mean, there are many different problems. I mean, even for example, we've been working with obviously lots of different data sources, as do many companies. You always have these conflicts between the sources. Not all the data agrees. You need to kind of find a way to consolidate that, and you need to make sure that the data keeps flowing and there's any problems, you handle them. So it can become a bit expensive. So yeah, I guess starting with the end in mind is a good way to think about what you really need, and then, go for it,
Work backwards from
work
there.
backward,
Yeah. You mentioned it yourself as well, so let's segue into the cookie-less future that we're heading towards. Whenever Google decides that now is the time. So talk to me a little bit more about this. So obviously there is third-party cookies, and there's a lot of talk about moving towards what they call zero-party cookies, or first-party at least. So meaning, So what is your definition of that? So maybe for someone who might not necessarily know, so third-party versus first-party. Cookies.
So third-party cookies are something that have been dropped and collected from a third party entity, right? So let's say, for example, if you're doing, let's say, programmatic advertising, and you are serving ads through your DSP, right, through your platform, there is data that's being collected from the user on the site where the advert is being shown. All right, so that's a third party. So that data is traveling from there to you, through the second party, right? And that's third party. First party is where you're collecting the data yourself, okay? So to be clear, when we say cookieless future, it's about third party cookies that won't be available. And so, in fact, one of the solutions that a lot of people are looking to is, how do I collect more first party data? How do I collect data myself so that it's first party? I can still use that data, all right? And it's legal, and it's something you can work with. Zero party is then when the customer supplies the data, right? So if you have, for example, if you find a creative way to use surveys or stuff like that, where you ask your potential customers or your customers, what would you like to see more of, so on and so forth, and they give you information directly, and you can use that as part of your, your targeting or whatever you want to do. So these are the differences. So first party and second party data are potential solutions. They are solutions to the third party data challenge that we will have. A lot of marketers will argue that they will never really replace what we have with third party data, right? I see their point. It's much easier. It's something that's directly available to us, but I guess we don't really have a choice. So, I think it's about what we manage to make out of this. I think it's no use crying over it. It's something that will happen anyway. But yeah, there's always, there are many tools now that could be used, like new technologies that could be used even for, like swapping sort of data between your platforms and other big platforms, where you can kind of share data in a regulated legal way so that you can help identify users, be able to improve your tracking anyway, and it's still all legal. Again, it needs setup, maintenance, research, stuff like that.
So the winners of the future will be the one that collects the most first-party data, effectively, and that's how you will have the sharpest data to target and find users.
Only if it's needed.
If it's needed, yes, I agree. Very good point. But so I get it, right? But it also, when I hear about one of the ways to collect first-party data is all these good old free-to-play games, but enter your details here to participate, blah blah blah. So it sort of takes me back to the early days of when Facebook came out and stuff like, where we were just flooded with all these scam games that were just win an iPhone and blah blah blah, all these kind of things. But enter your data here. Could there be a resurgence of those kind of tactics? Maybe it's already happening, or it will happen even more because as what do you call it? Companies are desperate to collect this first party data.
So I think for zero party data, where we are kind of asking people to supply that directly to us, I think one needs to be very creative. Right, and especially like for example in the casino domain, right? I don't really imagine a lot of casino players, filling in forms. I mean, they barely want to fill in the register form. They only fill it because they really need to. So I think, but maybe in the world of sports, maybe you can really think something up which is relevant. They get something out of it. Maybe it's offered in the right time. Maybe it's not too exhaustive. I think it needs a lot of creativity when it comes to zero party, right? How do we collect the data? How do we get people to give us information themselves by asking them questions, so on and so forth? When it comes to first party, it's more about tracking. So anytime anyone visits our site, our landing pages, if done well, we can, it's something that's even doable when serving adverts, right? So that I think is more of a technology challenge, more of a tracking challenge than having to be very creative with your customers and your prospects. So they both involve different complexities in a way.
Yeah. I also hear a lot of people or see a lot of comments sort of floating around that they think it will exclusively be, if you don't collect your own data, then it's impossible to target and buy ads and find new customers. But that's not entirely the case, right? Because I mean, if you're in a regulated market and you use Facebook or Google or whatever for advertising, they are collecting their own first-party data that the users have given them, and those advertising platforms will still be available for companies to leverage. But you can only work within their platform. It's the whole sort of display marketplace and like you say, the third party part of it that's missing. But these marketplaces will still be available, to my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, as I see it. So the advertising ecosystem already takes care of data in a large way, right? So a lot of the data would be available. If you look at, for example, like going back to programmatic advertising, which is I think one of the biggest channels that will be impacted by third party cookies. A lot of the data is available, and the advertising platforms also integrate solutions within themselves to solve problems of retargeting, attribution, and stuff like that, which kind of balances out this problem of third-party cookies. So there's a lot of that. Usually, data can be, bought to enrich and stuff like that. So yeah, but I mean, the future is a bit uncertain as always, right? My take is that if a company can own its data, it's much safer, because you don't really know what's going to happen next. You don't know what the next restrictions are going to be. You don't know when they will happen. You don't know how they will affect you. And as I see it, maybe I'm a bit of a control freak, but if you own your own data and you have direct control over that, and you can use it obviously in a legal, regulatory way, but if you can use it whenever you like, in any way, with whatever platform you like, that gives you so much more power to be able to work with your technology stack. So I'm a strong advocate of wherever you can, yes, do collect data, do take care of it, and do try to own it as much as possible. Not because you can't get part of it through other platforms, but yes, you're always dependent on someone else, and you don't know if you can always depend on that someone else. So yeah.
So in your view, John, with you've been in industry, you for sure know people in the industry working in other companies. So if we had to take like a pulse, a health check on iGaming, let's say operators, and how prepared they are for a cookieless future, so to speak, and collecting their own first-party data and stuff like that. If you had to give the industry overall a score from 0 to 10 today, 9th August 2023, what score would you give us as an industry, do you think?
Overall as an industry?
Overall, I mean, not necessarily Betsson, but overall from what you know and hear.
Okay, it's a bit hard to come up with a number.
Yeah, no,
I'd probably say 6 out of 10.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think, you know...
So people are starting, they're
I
realizing it, but they haven't really accelerated it full speed ahead just yet.
Yeah, and maybe even for, I mean, smaller businesses might have the difficulty of, like, the barrier could be knowledge or resources available to implement something like that, although, you know, they can use more readily available platforms to solve a lot of those problems. With bigger companies, there's the resources are there, but maybe it's more challenging to put things together in a timely way, you know, because there's a lot of moving parts that need to align. So all in all, I think, you know, in general, they should be okay in general, but I think there are also varying levels. Some businesses might be quite clueless. Others might have been very proactive.
Some ones and some 11s out there, most likely.
I guess it depends a lot on how, you know, if they've been investing a little bit in their marketing and technology, especially. Obviously, these things keep you more abreast with technology and with changes, and that's why I'm also obviously quite a fan of marketing technology. I think that, you know, I mean, I know that marketing and technology are always evolving. And so the more ahead you are and the more you are up to date with what you can do as of today, you know, and the more able you are to take advantage of that, you know, the more action you can take and the better the results will be.
Listening to marketing podcasts, etc.
Yeah. And trying out things as well, you know, testing and a lot of learning comes from that, I guess, as well, you know.
So the ultimate question: when will Google and the other big boys cut the cord? You think they have delayed it a number of times now?
It's been moved. Like the data has been moved. I don't know, like 2 or 3 times. Last date I've heard is like beginning of next year. I think that's the last date that was communicated. But again, a lot of marketers aren't really betting money on that, you know. But let's say that's the target date.
So we have 6 months to go.
We have some time to go. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, fantastic. So we spoke about another topic as well in our prep call, which is very. You know, it's almost too much up in the air at the moment, which is the topic of AI and MarTech. So. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts. So obviously MarTech is sounds like an area within iGaming that will be significantly impacted, or has the potential to be impacted significantly by AI, and then again separating AI into you know, the various parts. You know, it's not all Chat GPTs as we spoke about.
Exactly.
But what is your view on AI and its current or future impact on MarTech?
Yeah. So to be fair, the way I see it is that AI has been playing a very big part when it comes to marketing technology for quite a while, right? Because machine learning, right, has been used in marketing platforms, right, and has been used to optimize marketing activity through marketing technology for a very long time. Machine learning has been with us for, I don't know how long, but it's been a very long time. And it's always been there, right? But I think not many people really paid attention to it unless you're like a techie geek or a data scientist or someone who's into the subject. You wouldn't really pay much attention to machine learning. You know, maybe you'd see tools being able to produce interesting things, but you never really knew. But so what I think happened lately now, especially like with the emergence of these generative models and ChatGPT, is I think people became more aware of AI because it's been, as I like to see it, it's been more democratized, right? So before, AI was mostly used by companies, tools, so on and so forth, but now it's being used by the everyday average person at home. So now, you know, AI has become this big thing which could potentially take over the world because everybody now is much more aware of it, right? So Yeah, and I think a lot of people confuse, like AI with generative models. Generative models are just one part of that spectrum, right? So, but as we're saying, since this is what people are familiar with, this is what they refer to as AI, and there's a lot of hype. I think it comes with, it being such a marketable thing. Now, I think this is what adds to that hype. But in any case, even with generative models, I think there's a lot that can be done. For example, there's obviously the concept of creating content fast and at scale, ideation, coming up with suggestions, ideas. All this could be, plugged in with an API, and you can facilitate your work much more. Also, text to image is a fantastic tool. For the first time, we can generate images based on textual, as you know. So that could, it improves even design work, right? I think there's there's definitely a very big impact on the way people work, even on the job market, that I really see happening, because of a lot of jobs that maybe were being done by people before might start being given out to an AI. However, I still think that, I saw a meme somewhere, and it comes to mind now, that it's not AI that will take over people's jobs, but it's a professional who knows how to use AI tools better, And I think that's what really happens. It's not, I think many people are kind of scared because it's something new and it's a new tool. It does new automations that we couldn't automate before. But I think it's more about us learning how to use those tools. Like I have friends who are artists, right? And I'm seeing them use things like Midjourney, for example, where they're creating artistic images and videos, and it's just their work became better. It did not replace them. Their work is now more wow, when you see something like, wow, I never saw that before, So I think it's the same with marketing. We can do more, and I think it's up to us to really find ways to leverage those tools creatively, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I think people are split into two camps at the moment. The ones that are seeing massive opportunity and it's so exciting and I can really accelerate my work or my team or my company or whatever it is. And then there's the other bucket, which is fear. Will I lose my job? Will my company survive? Artists and lawyers. Suddenly, everyone, or at least we think, everyone can create their own contracts when they go and buy a house and all these kind of things. So I think there's these sort of two different buckets. But in your view, it sounds like you're more on the exciting opportunities and interesting future.
Yes, I mean, I'm quite wary, for example, in the sense of I'm quite careful when it comes to using AI. For example, like we mentioned, obviously you can generate content, right? Or you can generate, like you're saying, a contract. However, I think there still needs to be a great deal of human intervention. You need to really unless you're running some kind of quick like pump and dump operation where you just want to generate quick content fast, quickly, and at scale and very cheap, then okay, maybe you'll get away with it. But if you're generating content for commercial reasons, I think you need to be able to be very careful with looking at quality. Really double check that, but it can really improve speed. Like as a draft one, as a first version, you can generate content, so it kind of improves things. So I try to be, I mean, that's like in general, I always try to be, focusing on what you can do instead of what you cannot do, trying to find the opportunity and the silver lining, right? Otherwise, we can't move forward too much.
And how would you say has AI or maybe generative AI has it made a significant impact sort of in your tech stack as of today, or is it still sort of experimental? How are we going to use this phase, or like how do you see it?
With generative, so we're talking about generative models like ChatGPT, right? Because machine learning
has been around for a long time.
That's something that I'm very interested in and always seeing how to use better. I think it's a very powerful technology. When it comes to things like ChatGPT and these generative languages, I can say, like, we use it. I can't say it's been, something that turned, our technology stack upside down, or that's improved processes, throughout. There are processes that have been improved. Yes, there are some things where we've got some time off, and again, making sure we maintain quality, mostly relating to content, even code a little bit. Working with code, I think it's much easier to work with something like ChatGPT. It can facilitate things like understanding code, generating scripts, and having a version 1, so a lot of that, it's been interesting. But I wouldn't say it's kind of, it was a major, like a major improvement, something that really changed our game, right? Although there are a lot of plans to look further into it, to be a bit more creative with it.
Do you think the same applies across the industry? Like, again, if we should do a pulse check, a health check on how much generative AI has today been integrated into people's companies, is it are people still on the fence? Have they found strong and easy ways to integrate it? Or what's your view?
I think when it comes to text content, probably when it comes to text content, research, coming up with ideas, this sort of thing, I think most companies have started to use it to some extent. Yes, but when it comes to creating of design and visuals and stuff like that, I think it's still very underutilized. I think there's a lot that can be done when it comes to the design and visual areas that are not yet really being utilized. I think it's a bit more complex, to be honest, because if you want to generate text content, you just go into ChatGPT, and you say, just give me 500 words. Some people actually say please as well. I don't know if you should say please
I know.
to ChatGPT.
Do you say please to your ChatGPT or bot at home?
I feel weird.
Question for the audience.
I feel weird not saying please. So
it feels so
I admit
rude.
I wrote it a couple of times in the beginning. Then I realized I'm, saying please to a robot, and I thought, okay, I'm being ridiculous. So I think
on that point, actually, isn't it so weird how, I don't know about you, but I'm using ChatGPT much more than I'm using Google search, for example. So whenever I want to know anything, I mean, obviously Google search is up to date, and the latest data on ChatGPT is September 2021, the cutoff date for data or something. But I never had the please effect with Google. But I do with ChatGPT. I would never use please with Google. It felt much more like something non-personal. But ChatGPT feels much more personal or human.
I think we feel like we're talking to a more intelligent entity.
Yeah, there's that. We can almost see an outline of a person on the other end. That's how it feels for me, at least.
Like if I don't say please, it will give me the right information.
I feel rude.
Take that, Michael.
Exactly. But if you take the so now we're 2023, right? But if we think this into the future, let's go 2025 or maybe 5 years into the future. What is the extent to which generative AI will creep into MarTech, you think?
Yeah, I think it will creep more and more into everything, to be honest. I think more and more technologies will implement generative AI because it's just really good at generating pretty accurate content, So I think, I don't want to go too overboard with this, but I think, we may start seeing it more integrated into your watch, where you say, hey, wait, give me, please.
Give me, please.
Give me like suggestions for restaurants. I know I'm going to throw something around here, and using generative language on your watch, maybe you'll get like something, So I think it will be used more and more. What I do see as one of the, like a potential very big disruptor in the very near future, this is just my take on it. Some people would agree or not, but I think once Google especially starts integrating generative AI more into its search results, I think it will be quite a disruptor for acquisition marketing, because when you look at it, and even if you look at statistics, it's like 93%. Even sometimes I've read of all web experiences start with a search engine, right? And around 60% of that starts with a search for information, right? What an SEO is called an informational search. And generative AI is simply much better like you're saying, at answering those questions, then having to go do your own research, go through, I don't know, 5 or 6 different websites, read tons of articles. So what I see will happen, and what is obviously happening, is that search results will no longer take people directly to other websites, but they will simply answer questions there and then. And that is a very big portion of web traffic. So if you look at it, SEO channel, especially if you rely on information searches, that will be impacted. Not so much when people are looking for brands or comparing products and stuff like that. I think they'll still need a certain level of trust and still go into websites. But if you rely on information searches, like in the travel industry, for example, where people tend to do a lot more information and searches before they buy, I think that's something that will be heavily impacted. Paid advertising, I think it could reduce inventory. You know, affiliate marketing relies on people going into websites and then clicking. So still you're relying on, you know, people searching and going into a website. Paid advertising, like programmatic advertising, still, you know, relies on publisher sites having traffic. So in the short term, I really do see this causing a bit of a disruption. I don't know to which extent, to be honest. And I think, you know, they will need to find a way to still allow content creators to monetize their content, because it will create potentially legal problems. But also, let's say there are no legal problems, but, you know, why would creators create content if they cannot get that much traffic and monetize it through ads, sales, whatever? So I think that's something that I'm really curious to see how that's going to unfold and how it's going to affect acquisition marketing in general and how to go about it. Because even SEO, how's that going to work? You know, why will Google or why will the generative model maybe mention you or your brand in that? Will authority and trust still be a part of that? I think they will, because it doesn't, you know, the generative AI doesn't replace authority and trust. It simply kind of works with the content available to produce an answer. So I think that still remains there. But traffic, I think will be impacted on the end websites, and that's I think is one of the biggest changes I see, and not in 5 years' time. This is probably in the next under a year for sure.
For me, it's the executive summary, ChatGPT. Like you're saying, as in it's as opposed to you searching something and diving into 10 different results to try and get information.
Yeah.
It will immediately deliver an executive summary. It will check those 10 sites or 20 sites or 50 sites for you, summarize everything, compare everything, and give you, you know, the summary.
And it will even suggest products directly.
Yeah.
So not just answers, but also suggest products based on their information and stuff like that. I think even things like markup on websites will become more and more important to allow like the search engines to understand you know, the context and maybe that could be but we'll see. There's not really any good content around that yet. It's still very early days. No one really knows where everything is going, you know.
So the SEOs will no longer be afraid of Google updates. They'll be afraid of ChatGPT updates.
It will add
and how the algorithm works.
It will add another fear to the poor SEOs.
Yes, exactly.
Me included.
Okay, so if we have to summarize all the MarTech side. So what are the benefits for Betsson or for other operators to have a MarTech department in the first place? Is there, obviously Betsson is investing a lot into this, you know, you and your team, and there are many headcount, I'm sure, and people involved in this, and technology and tools and what have you. So what is the ultimate benefit for Betsson, do you think?
Good question. So I think, first of all, different businesses and different sizes will need different teams or different sets of resources to deal with MarTech. You don't necessarily need a very big team, depends on kind of the scope that you're trying to set for yourself. So I think the biggest advantage, as we had mentioned earlier, is improving the efficiency of your investment when it comes to both money spent and time, right? Because you're getting more back for both of them. So I think efficiency, reducing costs, improving conversions, you know, reducing CPA, stuff like that, is definitely one big advantage. I think investing in marketing technology can also lay out the foundations and the groundwork for you to be more future-proof and to be able to get better over time instead of go backward over time. So, for example, if you can, you know, if a company, I think, can invest in building its own infrastructure in certain things, if it can invest in building its own architecture, it's much easier to move into the future because you have some things ready. You don't always have to rely on finding new solutions for everything, you know. So there are certain advantages, certain economies there as well.
Very good, very good. Okay, Jan, we're coming to the end of this podcast, and I like to finish off with 3 predictions. So how do you see the crystal ball of MarTech, and how does it look in the future? So just whatever springs to mind, whatever, you know, there's no right or wrong answers here. But okay, so number 1, if you had to put a date on it, when do you think cookies will or third-party cookies will completely disappear? Mention it.
That would be very presumptuous of me, I think.
Yes,
but
that's okay in this podcast.
I would say safely, I think maybe within the first half of next year.
Okay.
They might move it again, I don't know, but I would imagine by first half of next year, like if I had to bet, let's say, I would bet that in H1 next year.
Okay.
It will be rolled out.
It will be,
Let's see
all over, said and done.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Will acquisition and retention teams ever align?
I think they can, and they do. You know, it takes a bit of work. I think it's a business by business, you know, a company by company answer, in the sense of more than an industry-wide answer. I mean, it all depends on how hard they work at it within that particular company. You know, I think there's a lot of work to do, a lot of, again, communication to be had. I think it's very important that both sides don't look at each other in any way as sort of competing, but really helping each other, you know, building their stack together, helping each other through data, through processes, through efficiencies. So there's a lot of work like that. So I think it's very doable. I think more and more they will see the need probably and put more effort into it. So I'm quite positive in how things will turn out.
Nice. I like positive answers.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one. So within the next 12 months, what will be the biggest change MarTech will see?
All right. So apart from what we mentioned from these generative AI things, which is maybe something that affects more marketing as a whole, I would say more and more focus on data. I think what I'm seeing is that even data professionals are being given more and more attention. Data scientists, engineers, architects, they're becoming higher and higher in demand, as I could see online. I think companies are focusing their attention more on this need for data and working properly with that. Also, because driven by these the cookieless future and these limitations, I think more and more companies will kind of wake up to that and realize that there's a challenge that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be addressed with technology and data. Otherwise, it's going to affect the way that they work. So I think in the shorter term, more and more attention will be given to how businesses work with data and their MarTech stack. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. We need to have a new podcast in H1 next year to see if these predictions came true or not.
We can bet €50.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Any final thoughts or comments or considerations from your side?
Nothing from me. Thank you for having me, Michael. It's been a pleasure. Very interesting chat.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Same. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.